This video is about public goods and merit goods and looking at the differences between the two. So let's start off with the characteristics of a public good. So a pure public good fully meets this characteristic of being non-excludable and non-rival. Therefore, anyone can access the good, and the consumption of the good does not reduce the ability for others to consume. Now, a merit good, however, in a free market would be excludable because there would be a price to pay by the first person, but consumers could also rival one another for such use. So let's look at some examples of these goods. So if we start off with public goods, as you can see in the pictures, we've got flood defence, we've got national defence, and we've got streetlights. Whilst examples of merit goods, we've got education, we've got healthcare, and we've got museums and galleries. So, if we were to look at merit goods to begin with, let's look at the diagram. So the diagram is a positive externality. So what it shows is the marginal social benefit is greater than the marginal private benefit. So therefore, merit goods tend to have positive externalities. But the issue with the provision of merit goods, that in a free market, it would be allocated by the private sector. Now, the private sector would clearly allocate the resource to the point where marginal private benefits equal marginal private costs, which is at Q1. Now, the problem with that is it's socially inefficient because actually society wants it being allocated at Q2 because of the benefits it has for the third party. So that means that there is some allocation of this resource, but it's not socially efficient, meaning that there's partial market failure. Now, if we consider public goods, though, we have to consider the free rider problem. So the free rider problem suggests that because, for example, it's non-excludable, anybody can access this good. So where is the incentive to buy this good? If we think about streetlights, you're not going to buy lights for the street. You're not going to pay for it to be installed. You're not going to pay for it to be energised. You're not going to pay for maintenance when your neighbours can free ride it. And they can benefit from it without having to pay anything towards it. And if there is no incentive from the customer, then there is going to be no demand and therefore no reason for the private sector to produce it. So that means that it's going to be a missing market and complete market failure. So if we consider the marginal social cost and we consider the marginal social benefits, at Q1 is the socially efficient allocation of such a resource. But as you can see, at Q2, it is at 0 because there is absolutely zero allocation of this resource. And that means that all of this would be the deadweight loss, highlighting the difference between the deadweight loss with a positive externality of merit goods, where there's some allocation but it's under-allocated, to a public good where there is no allocation, a complete missing market, complete market failure, and such a significant deadweight loss. So, just to remind you, public good, non-excludable. Non-rival, it includes obviously the issue, the free rider problem. It's a missing market and it's complete market failure. A merit good tends to be excludable in the free market. It's rivalrous because obviously it gets to a point where it's hitting capacity and you have to rival one another for that consumption. It tends to have positive externalities, but it's undervalued and underconsumed, possibly for the reason of maybe that consumers do have to pay, which creates an opportunity cost, and they may trade off on this good because they undervalue it to therefore consume something else. And because there is an underconsumption of this good, we have partial market failure.